Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast that's about other podcasts. Every single week, we highlight a podcast and we dissect it, book club style discussion. And yeah, we talk about it. And at the end of this episode, we'll have another recommendation for next week. And that's what we'll talk about then. I'm Kirk.
And I am Zach.
And this week, we're going to be talking about a podcast that I had heard about before, but this is the first time that I was able to really dive into it, and I loved it. It's called The Sporkful. And if you know anything about us, you know that we love cooking, we love food, so we talk about it a lot. And so this show was right up our alley. The episode is The Great Data-Driven Restaurant Makeover. So what do you think about the show?
I didn't really know kind of what the vibe of it was going to be, because typically I don't look into it. I just listen. I let it just happen to me and get just genuine reaction to it. And as they started going, I was like, oh, okay, I get this. And like, I ended up really enjoying this show because they set up everything, and I was waiting for the ending by the end of it, for sure.
And a little bit more about the show, because it's pretty crazy how successful they've gotten. They launched in 2010. And since then, the Sporkful has won the James Beard Award, Webby Award, and that word, Xavier Award for Best Food Podcast. And that's a lot of awards.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's incredible.
And they talk about how they use humor and humanity to approach food from all different angles. They include science, history, identity, culture, economics, and it's really neat. They just have a specific, it's kind of like the show we were talking about the other day, Planthropology. It's a different angle on a subject.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I hadn't ever really, because, by the title, you can tell a little bit about, they get crunchy on data, and they also really get into the psychology of how a restaurant owner is going to operate to make the most money off of their restaurant. And there are little tiny details of what the choices they've made in their restaurant that have very significant meanings behind them. There's a reason for everything. And if there's not, then they're missing an opportunity.
Yeah, so this specific episode had Dan, and they collaborated with NPR's Planet Money, which is another big podcast that I've heard of. I've listened to a few of their episodes, and they had one of their hosts, Sally Helms, on there with Dan, and they went to a restaurant in Queens called Uda, and it had gotten rave reviews from New York Times, and it kind of blew up, essentially, after that. Like, the reviews were great. It was named Best Restaurant, Best New Restaurant in New York Times. It was nominated for a James Beard Award. I mean, it was living the high life.
Yeah, and he was trying to have it be like an affordable, quick place to eat. Mm-hmm. And then he got all of this recognition, and it changed.
Yeah. And then so they're talking about how to capitalize on this success in the media, this virality that he got about the restaurant. And they're trying to min-max essentially the best way that they can to get people in, get them to eat the food, get them to enjoy themselves, get them out. There's so much to owning a restaurant, and there's such thin margins. I mean, we talked about it previously about how we would love to own a restaurant. We love the idea of owning a restaurant, but we know that the margins for a restaurant is razor's edge.
Yeah, no, and also they go under all the time.
Yeah.
Like, restaurants are very, very dangerous industries to be in, but I think everybody just loves the restaurant experience. And honestly, it's something that I'm kind of like jonesing for at this point, because it's like, it's been it's been a minute. It's been a month and a half since I went and sat down at a restaurant.
It feels weird.
I literally can't think of the last time there was that type of a gap, because it was just something we all took for granted, and just, oh, I'm going to just go out to eat, try this new place out. And like, when I was doing Creators Cove, I was going and doing that all over the place, all over Tampa and like St. Pete, and just trying places out and just going and hanging out. And so now it's been a month and a half where literally I have not done that. I've gone to like drive through or had them deliver it because I do. It's
Still
a
wanna
tough,
support.
yeah, it's a tough thing to just completely not support some of the restaurants that you really like. But at the same time, it's just I don't want to go sit in a crowded restaurant right now. But we take it for granted. But now I'm missing it.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the angles that I really liked about this episode is they kind of focused on one table, and it was the worst performing table in this restaurant. Mm-hmm. And I love how they kind of narrowed it down to one thing in this restaurant that they wanted to try to find a way to change.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about restaurants and restaurateurs in this episode. Apparently, you gauge everything essentially by how much each seat can make you. When it comes to a restaurant, I didn't know that.
I had never gathered that they put so much emphasis on each little tiny detail, but it makes perfect sense once you think about it. Because they can literally tell, okay, this ticket was this table, and they could just put that in a spreadsheet and they could have all of this information.
I mean, and they get down to, if you're a very data-driven restaurant, you will get down to price per minute, how much money per minute that seat makes for you. It reminds me of like a video game, like a sim game. You know what I mean? Where you're trying to make all the monies and things like that.
Finding to make every little second count. And they have all kinds of detail about price per minute and how long a table stays there and how much the average check is per table. So literally based on the location in the restaurant, how are these tables doing? And then like nights of the week, lunch versus dinner. There's a million different metrics that I was not aware of, but makes sense once you think about it.
Yeah, and they said there's like a formula of like 3 different things that play into a specific, the success or failure of a restaurant. And it's price, timing, and space. About how much something costs, how much time someone takes up a table, and then how much space they have.
Yeah, because they even mentioned that, okay, you want people in and out at a normal pace, but you don't want it too fast. There's a sweet spot for, you want them to be comfortable, but not too comfortable. You want them to eat quickly, but not too quickly.
I love how they talk about Dave Chang's restaurant. And
where you can't even sit.
They don't even have chairs because they want you in, they want you out. It's just you eat on this countertop and then you get out of here. It's good food, but we just want you to eat it and get gone. Don't stay here and have, take up a table like we used to. We were the worst restaurant. I
always tipped, but it feels like it probably wasn't enough for what we put the people through.
There was a restaurant for a while that we went to almost every day in the summer here in our little town. They didn't last very long. Maybe it was because
probably
of
our
us.
fault. Just pure bread eating.
They would give you free bread, and they were really good breadsticks. They were like, kind of like Olive Garden breadsticks, but they were homemade. They were really good.
They were better. Yeah,
better. They were definitely better. We would go there, and we would all order waters and get like 5 baskets of breadsticks.
Yep.
And that would be our lunch. And then we would all just tip $1 each or something.
Didn't you work there?
I worked there for 2 weeks.
Thought so.
That's when I realized that I could never be a waiter.
Okay. Sure.
I hated it. I hated it so much. I will never be a waiter.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to think about. And then they bring in the expert. So yeah, he had this one table that he thought was going to be the best table. It was the worst table. And so they really focused in on that. And then they found an expert named Stephanie Robson. And she's a Cornell professor. And she has crazy insight on things that I was just like, how?
So meticulous.
Yeah, but like just an incredible like talent, essentially, because they bring her in and she has written tons of papers. Like, I think that's what one of these notes you have here is how design influences spending. And so essentially think all of these data points that we're talking about, she writes papers on them. She really digs into the psychology that people have when they go to a restaurant, the data the design elements. And so this is essentially like a ringer for somebody who's trying to figure out, why is this one table that I thought going to be the best table the worst? And why is our mop closet the best table?
Yeah, they had a table way in the back. It was kind of like in this little alcove, and it used to be a mop closet, and it was the highest performing table.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we're almost done with the highlight of the show. Let's get right into it. If you haven't listened to the episode, we're giving you the quick Cliff Notes. The results are, she gave some recommendations. They made those, they executed on those recommendations, and they came back and they checked.
Yeah.
Did it work? And he actually lost a seat.
Yeah. And apparently that's a really big deal. Losing a seat.
He did the math. And first of all, this is nuts. But each seat in that restaurant equated to $75,000 per year.
Yeah. And
that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's
and
why he was fighting for it.
And if you have to lose one of and he definitely was. And it was kind of cute because he's just like, can we do this instead? He was just, you could tell he
eventually caved. But
he wanted to do the things, but is like anything but that. Anything but lose a seat. But it ended up working out for him because he took that one table and made it into 3 smaller tables. And so now he was able to fill them more often. Mm-hmm. And that made more sense. That made a lot of sense. And then if he needed to, he could put them together. You know, you get a bigger party, you put the tables together, make it a bigger table. And anyway, long story short, the lunch time during for that table didn't really change very much. It was not a statistical difference.
No.
But the dinner time increased the price per seat, like the price that a person would pay. Each person would pay by $9, like per meal, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And then I forget what the base was, but there was an increase of 19 cents, which doesn't sound like very much, but that's per minute that people were spending in each seat in that area. So these changes did make a difference.
Oh yeah.
One of the biggest changes is, I loved that she said she wanted a little wall because she's like, that one in the back, people feel like they have their own personal space.
Yeah,
she mentioned a little bit of a wall behind
tables being anchored is something that people want. And I never really thought about it, but then as I think about it, I was like, you know what? Yeah, kind of.
That's where I want to get into the discussions is like, she's like 42-inch wall right there. And she's like, because people can still see over it, so they don't feel like they're excluded from the restaurant, but when they sit down, they feel like they're in their own like cave. She even talks about like the psychology of like when we used to live in caves and it was our place to feel safe and stuff. It was crazy how much thought went into this.
Yeah.
But that brought me to and this is what I enjoyed about the episode is I thought a lot about my own psychology when it comes to a restaurant. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is not even, it's almost subconscious.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I think it's designed to be almost.
Like, what are some of the things that they didn't mention or some of the things that really turn you on or off about a restaurant? Like that you're like, man, this is a really good restaurant. And it has nothing to do like specifically with the food. One of the things that to me can either like make or break a restaurant experience is the temperature. If it's super hot or super cold and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it really depends for me because I am willing to put up with a lot for really good food.
It has but the food would have to be amazing for me to sit in there and it'd be super hot.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. That does, yeah.
This is Florida, so most places aren't super cold.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna really be an issue. I don't know. It's tough because now I see what they're doing. I see their shenanigans now for what they are. So like there's a restaurant in Seminole Heights that they have all metal chairs. So it's like very uncomfortable and they want turnaround, I guess, but it's a sports bar. So it doesn't really make sense because you're going to watch like a game, right? I mean,
they probably don't want you sitting there and watching a game.
Yeah. They want you watching a little bit of a game.
My dad, we used to do this. Oh man, I kind of feel bad now. I will say this, my dad was a very good tipper, so I'm sure that the waiters and waitresses were fine with it, but the restaurants probably hated it. let's say there was a Gator game. He would go like 2 hours for the game to get the best table because there was a table right in front of the TVs, all the TVs. And we would watch the entire game. So we would camp out at a table
4 or 5 hours
for 4 to 5 hours.
Yep.
Oh man.
That's probably what they're trying to avoid.
Yes.
You know, and this place I'm thinking of, it even has like, I don't want to like say a name. I don't know if it's like an issue, but they have a table that literally is just like a come and get it table. It's not, you don't get seated there. It's just a really long table with chairs all along it that you can sit there with however many people you want. You can sit there by yourself. You can bring a bunch of people. It's just if the seats are open, you can go ahead and sit there. So they have done some of the stuff that really seems to like mesh with what she was saying, where you have to like find ways to get all these seats filled all the time.
Yeah, the interesting thing is they talked about seats in a restaurant being very similar to real estate.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very crazy thing until they started explaining it.
It makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense because if it's a nicer seat, if it is a more comfy seat, people tend to want to spend more money. Just like if it's a nicer house, people are willing to spend more money. They even talk about like the plates and the cutlery and how like it could be the same. They even talked about like this could be the same cut of fish, the same salmon, but if it comes on a nice plate with some really heavy, like feels great in your hand silverware, you're like, oh, I don't feel bad for spending $30 on this piece of salmon. But you get it on a paper plate and some plastic silverware, you're like, oh, I should never have paid this much money for this piece of salmon. It's on a paper plate.
I mean, those seem like extremes, but yeah, I think you're right. No, but at the same time, some of the most delicious sandwiches I've ever had are just in a brown paper bag.
You're not wrong.
There is some people who can break the mold a little bit with high quality deliciousness.
So yeah, and
the music one got me like the most probably because it made me think of all of the different places that there's music playing. It's like, what are you trying to do to my brain?
All I know is when I used to work at Lowe's unloading trucks, that would rot in my brain. I hated it. It was just like soft rock, and it was so bad.
Yeah, no. When I worked,
and we were in the at the store when there was no sound really. It was just us, and the music felt so loud. When normally you go to Lowe's, you don't even hear the music because there's so many other things.
Yeah,
you know,
it's just loudness all the time.
Oh, it was the worst.
Yeah, my experience like that is definitely, I don't know. It was when I worked at the market. They would put on Christmas music in like October. So by basically mid-October, I was like, "Oh, please stop," because it was one station. So I just heard them all the time, and it affected my brain.
The Joy FM.
I don't think it was that one. It was serious.
Oh, okay, because that one does Christmas music only from like Halloween on.
Yeah. Oh, Twiggly's saying in chat that food trucks are one of the ones that break the mold. Doesn't have to feel fancy, but it tastes good. And they don't have any seats. They've gotten above all of that. They're like, here, take your food and go away from here.
And I've been seeing a lot of those around town lately now that no one can go inside of a restaurant, but they want good food. Food trucks around here are rocking.
It's their time to shine.
Some restaurants that did not have food trucks now have food trucks in our town. I found that fascinating. Yeah. So another thing that I thought was really interesting was their sponsor. And we actually talked about this like 2 weeks ago, and I didn't even actually no, maybe it was last week when I heard this. And their sponsor was Applegate, which is a meat that mixes their meat with veggies that complement the flavor of the meat. Mm-hmm. And I did that the other day, and it was so good. I didn't use their stuff. I just made my own. I got some ground beef.
Okay.
Mixed in some mushrooms.
Bananas.
Some bananas. No bananas. Some onions and some very finely chopped up zucchini. Dang, it was good.
That sounds good.
It was
I
so
can go
good.
for that. Sounds like a meatloaf.
I want a different name because it's good marketing, but Applegatarian, because that's the name of the company.
It's mediocre marketing, I would say. Like, yeah, I get it.
But I do want to be.
Like
I want to be that thing. I want to be whatever that means, where they eat meat and vegetables.
It's called being a human person. It's omnivore. There's lots of names for it.
Omnivoretarian.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is what they needed. They needed a Tarian. They needed to hook onto that.
So yeah, it was a very enlightening show. Obviously, this is the reason that they're able to win all these awards. It's very well produced. They've been on a lot of TV as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've been on the cooking channel a few times.
Really?
The hosts and stuff like that on a few different times. And it's such a good show. Really fascinating.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was one of those things, by the time they got down to like Ronnie saying that he was going to make all the changes, like, okay, I got to hear what happened. I got to see if this worked out. I got to see if you can moneyball a restaurant.
Yeah, that's a very good way of saying what this episode was about. So yeah, go check out the Sporkful if you like food. If you like, I mean, just it takes different angles on food. Everyone likes food, right? I mean, who doesn't like food? So yeah, just go check the show out because you like food.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's really fun to listen to. All
right, so that brings us to next week's recommendation, and I've got another one, and I think you're gonna like it, Zach. It's a music one.
Okay.
But it's a specific type. The name of the show is Hit Parade. They really dive into why something was a hit during the time that it was, why, like, what was the culture at the time, what was the atmosphere in media when this became a hit. So that I listened to one about Lady Gaga, and I thought that was fascinating because I've never been a fan.
So it's more about like why the culture got behind it than like how was this song made.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Because a lot of them some of them are one-hit wonders, or like why, like you look back and like, why was this a number one song?
I mean, there's a lot of those throughout history.
But I find this one fascinating because they talk a lot about
Mambo number 5.
I think that would fall in under here. Songs that were silly, goofy songs that just took off. And it's called the White and Nerdy Edition. So yeah,
there he is.
They focus a little bit on Weird Al because he's kind of the king of the parody, but the kitschy songs.
The dude has made an entire living off parody songs.
Yeah, but it's fascinating, and I did not realize how many kitschy songs there were that are ubiquitous to like growing up.
Oh yeah,
and a lot of them are old. I did not know how far back that went.
I feel like there was more old.
Yeah, no,
because I'm trying to think. I would think there's much more.
I would say Old Town Road would probably be in this category. But
that's one.
I know. It still happens. But back then it was kind of like a thing.
I would definitely count Old Town Road there. That is not a serious song. Yeah. I mean, if anybody's gonna get mad about that, I don't know what you're gonna get mad about.
You might trigger my son. He loves it so much.
It's not a serious song. He can like it. It's not serious though. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna write a masterpiece of music. No, it's about it being a banger, and that's it. He's talking about his horse and it's Gucci belt or something.
Yep. So guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Hit us up on all the socials.
Yep, we got them.
Say hello.
We'd love to hear from you.
Hey, if you find a new podcast, let us know. We'd love to listen to it and then maybe spotlight it on the show. We'll shout you out.
Thanks everybody for listening, for being a part of what we do. Yep. We appreciate it.
And until next week, remember.
Again, there's always more to discover.
What am I supposed to say? I forgot again.
And remember.
Yeah.
You act like we haven't done this like 300 times.
Why have I forgotten this?
You want to do it again? Go for it.
And remember.
There's always more to discover. Thank you for listening to the Podcast Discovery Show. We have a few things we'd like to tell you. First, we would love to hear from you on Twitter at the PDS Official or in our Facebook group, the Podcast Discovery Club.
Secondly, leaving a rating or review on iTunes helps tremendously in giving us visibility and also visibility to the podcast that we recommend. You can also check out our Patreon page to get exclusive bloopers, old episode archives, and other exclusive content while supporting the show.
Finally, seriously, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you about what you love about podcasts. And thank you for being a part of all of the things that we do.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.